If you're trying to build a new life while protecting your old self, you're going to stay exactly where you are. You cannot build a new life with the same habits, same fears, same identities, and those same old stories that created that old one. Change does not begin when you discover a new philosophy, a new teaching, or even a new path. Change begins when you stop being who you were. I'm Justin Gates, and you're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. So glad you guys are here with us today. Michael, joined by Michael, if you can't see him.
Hey fam.
Say hello, Michael. I'm gonna stop calling you the boy wonder. People are gonna think that you're actually Robin and that I might be Batman. So today we're gonna talk about the fact that we cannot build a new life with an old self. Where does that hit you?
Man, this was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn because I had so much aspiration and felt so advantageous in the things I wanted in life. But I never thought about the steps it would take to become the person able to hold those kind of aspirations.
Yeah. And today's episode comes directly from our book of alchemy, the book I teach from. And we're going to talk about some things, Michael, that might feel kind of heavy. They might hit kind of hard. And I'm just going to warn you now that there might be some things today that we don't want to hear, right? Just like when you first came to me and we started working together, when it came to alchemy, that was a tough place for you to be, wasn't it?
There was just so much that needed to transmute.
Yeah, but we'll get there, right? Little by little. I'm not even there all the way sometimes. So for many of you listening, the events that brought you to this moment were not random. They may not have been your fault, and most likely were not your fault. But I don't believe they were random. And they certainly weren't punishments from some deity, the universe, right? A life ill-lived in another time. In this moment, they're signals. And awakening, Michael, does not always arrive gently, as we've said before, right? Were there a lot of fluffy clouds and candy and sunshine for you?
No, that's one thing that always gets me with the healing scene is everyone shows it off as flowers and gardens and nature and love. And man, you're going to the pits of hell for a minute. It is.
Yeah, the trenches, dude. It feels like warfare. This is why we always talk about the things. We just did a show. You just led us through a show about traumas and how they're not so much about what happened, but how we embodied them. How they affected us inside. And spiritual work really can be dirty and messy and bloody and, my God, dark. So, and to your point, this is where a lot of people misunderstand transformation and alchemy. Many of them believe that choosing a new path is enough. I just have to choose a new path, man. It's easy. It's easy. Sunshine and rainbows, right?
Well, it's like how many people chase change throughout their life. I'm going to be better tomorrow. I'm going to start doing this tomorrow. And they always fall flat on their face.
Well, because I'm just going to adopt a new path. I'm just going to start reading new books. I'm going to start adopting a new language or somehow aligning on a very surface level, by the way, with some fantastic philosophy that's going to somehow create change by itself. But a true path that's walked, and I'm not saying any path is the true path. I'm just saying a path must be lived. It must be walked. It cannot remain an ideal because ideals do not transform lives. Embodiment does, right? I'll put it to you like this, Michael. Choosing a path, reading all these new books, all these things, without changing ourself at the fundamental, deepest levels, is like planting seeds in soil that is poisoned and full of acid and just can grow nothing. And then we wonder why nothing grows, right? If that inner environment remains unchanged, if we keep doing the same things over and over and over again, which we all do subconsciously after a while, right? The outer structure that we're trying to build will eventually just collapse back in on itself because we on the inside collapse back into familiar patterns and habits, right? This is why and this is just this is just what happens to us when we start to ruminate. We start to repeat cycles. Even after these super profound insights that we find, as the show we did together, insights are not enough. We must integrate, right?
Yeah.
And that insight is real, but what's missing?
Action, change, doing the work. I mean, so often we want so badly to be someone different.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the sacrifices we have to make to become that.
Hard truths, the dark walk, the shadow work. The way of Ashla is very clear on this. Sovereignty is not optional. You cannot outsource responsibility. Not me, nor any teacher, no doctrine, no order, no church can walk a path for you, right? You will be guided, hopefully, and hopefully supported, challenged for sure, the good ones, but that work of shedding the old self belongs to who?
Us. I mean, one of the key things to take away is why so many people try to start new habits, start new things in their life, and they do it for a week or a couple days, and then they just stop. And it's because it loses that excitement. Change is exhilarating to us. But the minute it loses its luster, the minute it becomes effort instead of this energy that's motivating you to change, that's when people start to turn away, because their patterns then kick up, because they'd rather do what's comfortable than what's uncomfortable.
Yeah, right. Absolutely right. Which kind of segues into the first part of this show today. Betterment happens in stages, right? We need to learn to normalize rebirth, restarting, recalibration.
Well, I think a big part of this is that there is so much that to become who we want to become, we got to be willing to work with ourselves and meet ourselves where we're at, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's the truth. We are creatures of habit. We are going to fall on our face multiple times with anything we pursue that is outside of our norm. But that's okay.
It's natural. It's perfectly natural. It is how things are done in this universe. At our level and every other level. Right?
Yeah.
So, this is one of the great illusions that I think people carry into alchemy or change. Any kind of change, is the belief that transformation happens in an instance, in a flash. And that's only true for death. I'll give you that. That's only true for death, because death will change you, right? In a flash, okay? That we somehow will be just this one big, dramatic, single breakthrough moment where everything finally clicks and the old self simply disappears. That's not how it works. That's not how real betterment works. Lasting betterment, right? And as you said a few minutes ago, anyone who has genuinely walked a path of growth, healing, transformation has started over many, many times.
I think about when I quit smoking. It did not start where it's like, I'm just going to quit smoking and then I was done. And that does happen for some people. We have these moments, these aha moments, but they're just a handful of times a lifetime.
Right.
But for quitting smoking, it's like the first time I quit, I tried the nicotine pouches. I did fairly good, but then I started using a little bit more and got back into it. Then the second time I quit, it was like weaning myself off, got pretty low, but then I started going through bursts. And it wasn't until the third time I went for it that I've been able to stay clean from cigarettes for 8 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations on that, by the way. That's a tough thing to break. You know, it really is. I know from experience too. I did wake up and quit smoking years ago, and I did it for 3 years. And then one day I just started again, right? So yeah, that aha for me, it was a big win, but it didn't last. It didn't last. I mean, 3 years, man, Justin, 3 years is pretty good. But it didn't last. But it didn't last beyond that. And then I was back to a pack a day. Right?
Well, I think this brings up such an important point about change. When we have behaviors ingrained in our neural pathways and we change, we do this work to build what we want, to build this better life, we have to always be mindful of the patterns that we could slip back into, because we are creatures of habit. And even if it's not been a habit for 3 years, it's very easy for the brain to remember those pathways within you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the best outcomes unfold in stages. They move in cycles, right? You advance, you recalibrate because you stumble, you shed, and you refine, and you do this over and over, and then you advance again, and you do this over and over again, right?
Yep.
And each time we do this, it brings new understanding, but with new understanding come new challenges. Sometimes what felt like great progress now becomes a new baseline if we do it right, if we do it progressively, right? What's hard about that, though, is that once you get a new baseline, what? Now you start over again, and the work begins again from that new baseline, and then you just keep doing this. And this is why this stuff's hard, but it's not impossible. And even when you fall, you fail. It's fine, because that's how natural growth happens. That's how it actually happens, right?
It's like research
Sometimes
and
you
development
win,
in a
and sometimes
workplace,
you
right?
win. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of that inside if we're
Yep.
paying attention. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And sometimes you win by realizing that what you already knew was right. We confirm that by doing, right? Especially when it's kind of difficult to keep doing those things that we know are true, and those things that we know that are good for us and they're the right steps to take. Other times when we hit a plateau, then we got to apply more living, more action. We must move through the missteps and the friction, and we must really go through this honest reflection. Wisdom is not a possession of knowledge. Wisdom is knowledge that's been tested and applied and tested again and refined through experience, right? That's where wisdom comes from. I mean, I read a lot of smart things by smart people, way smarter than me. Their wisdom doesn't magically just go in there. I have to take what they say, and I have to check it. I question and check everything. You should be questioning and checking everything I say. But there's a moment where I'll give you a little tip. As we do this, we start to become comfortable with this process. Wouldn't you say? If we're doing it right. The problem comes when we start to expect perfection rather than being present in them.
And I was thinking about self-judgment, how that's such a kryptonite for this kind of work, because I think that's when it got comfortable, was when I finally stopped judging myself for not being perfect, for it being such a struggle, because you try 100 ways just to change 2%. And yeah, that's not good refinement skills, but often that is the case.
Well, and we get stuck in loops, and we convince ourselves that these ruminating thought, these excessive mental looping creates more insight and more clarity. But it doesn't. Movement does. Movement through and with the insight creates clarity, because you can see plainly what is working and what's not. I love the way you put it. We're field testing this stuff every day.
Well, I think the most important part in this transition from knowledge to wisdom is we can know something. It's easy to learn and know something, but to teach the body, to let the body know, is a whole nother animal, because that's where this work is, truly. It's retraining the body to understand this is the path, this is the routine, this is safe.
And this is why we always encourage an unfolding, because through this unfolding, we compound the things that are good for us and the things that we're building, the good habits, right? The good thoughts, the things that are useful to us, things that work for us. Not being flawless, because you're not. I'm not even close. Not even close. But just taking those steps, the imperfect steps, the unfolding compounds, and you start to build a better capacity, right, for things. On this path, it's okay to restart. Something I teach, and I teach very, very predominantly, right? It's one of the most important things that I kind of hammer into you. Restarting is not regression. Restarting is refinement. We must restart many times. There have been so many versions of me between my child self and my person now, where I'm in this moment. I have died so many times. Figuratively, of course. I'm not a vampire or something, but
Sometimes we wonder.
I sometimes, I know. I only come out at night. The sun burns, it burns, but restarting is not a step backwards. It's not regression, it's refinement. That's the point of alchemy, is to refine ourselves, right? And if you can just understand this a little by little, then you can really stop judging yourself over it. And if you can apply curiosity and replace judgment with curiosity for yourself, then you really start to refine. And then you'll be like, oh man, I need to start over in this part. And I need to get rid of this now. It doesn't work for me anymore, right? Type of thing. You really got to stop measuring yourself and measuring your worth by how quickly you transform or don't transform. You have to honor that quiet discipline of just doing. Just do it, Michael. Sponsored by Nike. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
We're not sponsored by Nike, but just do it. The discipline of just continuing will build more strength than you can imagine. Because new lives they're not built in a single leap.
I would say the biggest pitfall I see out in the world with people who want to change their lives, because I think most people want to do that. The biggest pitfall is people get so stuck in the articulation phase where I'm going to make the perfect routine. I am going to build the perfect system. I am going to get all these things together so that I can begin. It's never begin. That's never where they start. It's everything they want to do before they begin, or that time they want to wait for. It is the avoidance of action through constant refinement in that regard. Not the refinement of action and then taking notes, but in trying to refine the perfect process before they begin.
Freedom begins when we start to freedom begins when we start to purposefully find the things that bind us, right? The practice of introspection reveals those chains that hold us down, that bind us. And this is where it starts to get really uncomfortable. This is where the sunshine and rainbows start to betray us. There are no cookies here. There are no cookies, no cake. It's not going to be fun. But it's one of the most important steps we can take, because we have to take an honest look and self-examine. This is where we start to notice those quiet patterns that keep us chained to an old version of ourselves or old things that happened to us in the past. Most of us are trapped there, right? In the past, by chains we can't even see, because we've just quietly accepted those. We've agreed to be bound by those, as you would say.
Yeah, that's where our coping strategies come from. That's where our current approach to life comes from. It's all built around the past, even if we have no idea. If you would have told me this 3 years ago, I would have been like, I'm over the past. I am so past everything that's happened to me.
I did say that to you 3 years ago, and that's exactly what you said.
Crazy it's been that long.
It has. Look at us now. Look at us now, man.
Yeah, right?
But let me ask you this. How loud does fear and doubt announce themselves to us? They're just like, hey, you're a scaredy cat. Hey, you're confused and full of doubt. Right?
Yeah, the best analogy I have for this is something I've been reflecting on when it comes to this topic. The world is a perfect balance, right? The way it spins, the way it keeps the ecosystems all in alignment. What happens if you just stop one of these things that keep the world functioning the way it is? The whole system goes into chaos.
Right.
And that is what happens when we go against our natural proclivity to go about life. Anytime we introduce change, it creates discomfort in our systems. It creates discomfort in our minds, in our very souls. And it is just like the world stopping spinning and all the chaos that would happen on the planet. And we usually never plan for that. We're like, nope, I can just power on through. Little do we know.
Well, yeah. 3 years ago, how old were you?
Are we talking spiritually or are we talking in real life?
No, your age. How old were you?
Yeah, 33.
You were 33 years old. It took you 33 years to quietly build up that system that you clearly felt you needed to change, right? This didn't happen at once. Now, all this stuff didn't happen to you at one time, is my point. You have to go through 3 years of pain and misery and not nice spiritual things to realign from 33 years of muck, right? That's why it's hard. That's why it hurts. Fear and doubt rarely announce themselves in a way that we can see them clearly because it just built up over time. They will slip right on in, and we ruminate in the backs of our minds because a lot of times these things will disguise themselves, right? We'll call them reason. We'll call them self-protection. We'll say it's just who I am. It's just how I am. Those are all shadow mechanisms. Those are the things designed to keep us where we are, where we were. But we have to move forward. And look, you don't lie to yourself because there's something wrong with you or because you're weak or whatever, right? You just, as we always say, you're trying to feel safe. You will justify behaviors that no longer serve you because they serve themselves. It becomes, you talk about this a lot. It's the subconscious rumination that is just there getting us through it. The only way that we know how. And we will defend that. Defend stories that explain that convince us why we can't change yet. And a perfect point you made. We'll postpone this growth until we get the perfect preparation, right? I'll give you an example. Say a guy wants to get in good shape. He wants to build lots of muscle. He wants to look like He-Man. But in order to do that, he has to have the perfect workout equipment.
Yeah.
No, just needs to start doing push-ups, right? We already have all the things we need to get started. Yeah, push-ups ain't going to make you look like He-Man. But doing push-ups, if that's all you can do, is way better than waiting for the time where you can get the magic muscle machine, right?
Yeah. A great example of this is, I have been so apprehensive to go to the gym with how busy my schedule's been, all the things I'm trying to do. The more and more it's become harder to motivate myself to go, or better said, better to get there. Because I've had lots of motivation. I've known that I had that voice consciously going, you need to go to the gym. You need to go to the gym. How did I start going to the gym? This week is my first week really hitting the gym, multiple days, lifting, doing all this stuff. And what it took was, start with me just walking into the building. Then after doing that, it was like, I'm going to hit the treadmill for a week. And I just walked on the treadmill for a couple days. And slowly I built that momentum, but it started with that first act of just walking in the door.
Yeah, that's an unfolding. You're building capacity by doing that. And if you try to convince yourself, well, that's not good enough, Michael, because that wasn't you didn't go right in and just go right to being a professional gym rat. What's wrong with you? You right?
Exactly.
The truth asks a lot of us. And introspection asks a lot of us, right? It asks us to look at ourselves without flinching, right? It's hard.
95% of your thoughts don't come from you consciously thinking them. They come from the unconscious. And the best analogy I ever heard for this is, imagine your consciousness as the day shift and the night shift is your unconscious. If these two things are not sunk up, which it's going to take a lot of work in that night shift to get on the same page as the day shift, you're going to constantly sabotage the company that is you.
Yeah. Anybody that's ever done shift work knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because the day shift always screwing the night shift, and the night shift always screwing over the day shift. Shift work sucks, and that's why. Because nobody's synced up that way.
Yeah. And it's not a matter of all of a sudden your unconscious knows, but you got to train it. You got to get familiarized with what you want to build in your life, and that is uncomfortable as fuck.
33 years you trained it, and you're trying to change it in 3. Now you have. Not perfectly. Humanely, though.
Yeah.
Humanely.
Lots of work still to be done, but there is so much progress. I've changed more in the last 3 years than those 33 years of trying to change my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels overwhelming because that distance between who we are now, who we were then, and who we want to be or imagine ourselves becoming, that gets very overwhelming. It's difficult to hold that in one container, all of that at once.
Yeah, there's a level of grief that has to happen there.
Yeah, and a whole lot of patience. Patience will protect that progress, no matter how slight, no matter how small. Small, deliberate steps build trust with yourself. Patience protects that, though. You're inch by inch, man. Every time you make an honest adjustment, that weakens those old patterns. Over time, Michael, it will do that without triggering that resistance. But when you rush the process and you force the process, you become impatient. And impatience is that very thing that runs that rate of failure through the roof. Because we start doing what? We start feeling this sense of overwhelm and urgency. You'll mistake urgency for commitment and your force for actual strength. But neither of those things are true.
No, and that's so powerful because I never thought about it in that context, but that's such a perfect way to phrase it. Because often when we want to make change in our life, we feel urgent about it. We feel this has to happen now, which is a lot of those hormones I was talking about earlier that are pushing us to make change within the first week and then die off afterwards. And they don't. And since we're counting on that to keep us motivated, we end up stopping and going right back to where we were.
Yeah, and this is why insight without integration is a path to failure. This is why a lot of self-help doesn't work, right? Because we have to confront all of these things. And the reason we say go so slow is because you have to balance a lot of things. You have to juggle a lot of things without beating the crap out of yourself, without falling prey and victim to these quicksands that we're going to talk about now. These are some pitfalls, or some quicksand, I like to call it, because these things really suck us down away from this transformation. Really kind of like these hidden enemies of transformation, right?
Yeah.
Take us through stagnation. Why is stagnation such a quicksand?
Stagnation, God. I have suffered from the quicksand that is stagnation far too often in my life. You know, we think about dealing with people, building relationships, and being social as something that you either have or you don't. No, it is a skill that you cultivate and then you practice. Because when we get stagnant in life with our goals, with just doing the humdrum of the day in, day out without any purposeful activities, we grow comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
The mind craves comfort in the path of least resistance. And the more you give it that, the harder it's going to be to break free from it. The harder it's going to be to pull yourself out of that quicksand, because complacency is one of the most dangerous things to us.
I oftentimes confuse stagnation as contentment. Everybody thinks I'm very chill, and I am, to a fault sometimes. Stagnation for me will disguise itself as contentment, and I will say, I'm content. How you doing, Justin? I'm good, man. I'm actually really content. And when I hear myself say that, pause. And then I think, are you really? Don't bullshit me, Justin. Are you really content? Because this sounds like stagnation to me, right? When you start to do this work. Because everything becomes comfortable and manageable, right? And I don't feel quite as uncomfortable as I used to, so that discomfort is lessened. And then I'll tell myself there's no urgent need to change. Everything's fine. But don't get this messed up. Comfort is not the same thing as alignment. Because alignment isn't always nice.
Yeah.
When we stop challenging ourselves, what sets in? Decay, right?
Yep.
Complacency, as you said. We start to form echo chambers, which are no bueno.
Well, I think decay is another perfect word for it, because that's our skills will atrophy. Our drive will atrophy. Our ability to do hard things will atrophy.
Thank you. Yeah, and when we get too comfortable, when we get to a point where we are stagnant, we'll start to surround ourselves with people and adopt and adapt and hold tightly to ideals where we're not tested ever, right? Growth and refinement require friction and heat and pressure. This is where it's important to have a good circle of family, chosen and otherwise, right? Because we really can get out of that funk when we commune with people who test us.
Well, I think an important thing to point out here is, because I have fallen victim to this, is you got to understand the family you're building. You don't want people who are too agreeable. And it doesn't mean you can't have people like that in your life. When your whole circle are people that only share your views, that
Yeah.
only that have the same level of drive you're at right here, when that's all your
Yeah.
circle is, that is what you will bring in. You are who you spend your time with.
Yeah.
And it is so hard to break free from that because they don't want to see you accelerating ahead.
Yeah. That's and this is beside the point, but I see that a lot with a lot of the AI that people are chatting with now, and they're chatting them for therapy, and they're chatting with them to test their ideals, and they're chatting with them for whatever reason, right? And AI chats are so agreeable. They are
They're
just so
sycophantic.
completely almost to a crazy level. They're mirrors without reflections, is what they are. Now I know a lot of people say they can train that, and you probably can. I'm not an expert in AI. But I'll say just be careful about looking into mirrors that show you no reflection, no true reflection, right? They're not good for
Well,
you.
what, like you said, I mean, as far as the trainability, like I'm sure there is a way to go about it, but most people think you can say to it, "Don't mind hurting my feelings, just tell me the truth." It's still going to give you a sycophantic response. Like
Yes.
unless you have a literal trained model, it will be
Hmm.
sycophantic. It might be like, "You want the hard truth, so here it is." It's
Right.
okay.
Right. Yeah. Just like being surrounded by yes men, as they used to call them. Yes men. Companies ran by yes men never go far. Why is fear such a dangerous quicksand for transformation?
I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but when it comes to fear,
I
most
just
of us don't realize it's what's driving it.
I just want your answer, man. There is no right answer.
Yeah, a lot of us don't realize fear is what's driving our actions. We'll make
Yeah.
excuses, we'll tell ourselves all the stories, but we won't have the heart to say, "I'm afraid to do this."
Yeah, and that's a good point. There's also people confuse caution for fear. Fear is not the same as caution. Caution keeps us alive. Fear keeps us frozen, or fear makes us run, or fear makes us fight. And fear, as you said, it's working so much in the background that it locks us into these patterns. It convinces us that stay just like you are, Michael, because that's a lot safer than stepping into this great vast unknown that is life.
Yo.
But we defeat fear, and it loses its power through practice, through training, not avoidance. Confidence is not a feeling that appears when everything is in perfect circumstances. That's not where confidence is built. It's built through this repeated discipline, engagement, and practice with challenge, where the rubber meets the road, where there's pain and pressure and heat applied.
Well, it's like self-trust, man. You don't build self-trust in perfect situations. You
No.
build self-trust in those moments where you want to do something else, but you choose to do what you need to do.
Yeah, yes. Why is self-doubt such a dangerous quicksand on this path of transformation?
Self-doubt is that voice in the back of your head telling you can't do this. This is going to be too much. It's what formulates all the excuses. And I think a key thing with self-doubt is understanding its roots. That's shadow work, all the things we talk about on this podcast. It's about understanding this voice because self-doubt is one of the greatest hindrances because it's not just dangerous in the beginning. It's something that will sneak up on you on the most critical moments. It is the thing that'll whisper in your ear when you're going to close that deal. It's the thing that is going to scream at you the minute you need to take executive action.
Yeah, yeah. Self-trust and faith in ourselves. This self-doubt weakens that. And for a lot of people, every challenge we face feels like confirmation of that. Confirmation that, especially if you're starting a new path, a path that's designed to transform you. Every time you're challenged in that, it feels like, oh, this is just confirmation that I'm not fit for this path. I'm not fit for this. I'm not fit for that. I'm not fit for this job, or I'm not fit for this relationship, whatever. And really, this comes without any kind of proof. But if you don't have a solid belief in what you hold to be true, growth becomes very fragile, right?
When I think a lot of self-doubt too, it comes from one of my favorite things to understand is inner locus of control next to outer locus of control.
Mm-hmm.
Self-doubt comes from when you're trying to put on a show, and you might not even know you are. I remember when I started doing this work, and I was told, I think you told me, it's like you care too much what other people think. It's like, I don't care what people think. I'm my own person. I'm a black sheep. I do my own thing. And as I dove into it, it's like, oh my God, everything I do is because I'm trying to manage what people thought of me. And
Right.
so often when we're so driven by, I mean, how many people want to start a business, and it's not because they care about something they're passionate about. It's because they want that house, they want that status, they want that woman on their arms. It's all these materialistic things outside of themselves. And when you base your value off of these things outside of yourself, you're gonna feel like crap. You got to give yourself your own affirmation. Be proud of who you are in this moment and live a life in accordance to the pride you want to feel.
Right. Because ultimately, I wanted you to trust yourself. I wanted you to trust yourself so strongly that you could question your beliefs and not collapse. That you could question your path and not collapse. That you could challenge me, Michael, and not collapse. I needed you to trust yourself, and you do. And this is the kind of self-trust that we need to develop, right? So that we can do these things without collapsing. Self-doubt keeps us frozen just like fear does. And so, and you segued us into this fourth one, the need to control.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very tempting quicksand for us to step into, isn't it?
Oh my God, so much so. I mean, this is another one of those that you don't even realize is a thing until it's happening. There's so much in your life you're trying to control and you have no idea. You could think you are it's codependency, right? This was the big one for me. It's like, I looked at my relationship. I had that one that was really rough. She was on drugs. I was trying to save her all the time. I was constantly trying to manage her life and save her from the consequences of her actions. And it's like, I'm not controlling. I let you do you. Because that was always what she was throwing in my face. And I realize now, it's like, no, me enabling, me trying to save her from these consequences, it was me constantly trying to control the narrative. Because eventually things would change. You know, so much of what drives us is control, and we have no idea.
Yeah. This might be the most subtle but most dangerous trap of all on this path of alchemy, this path of transformation. Because growth and healing requires letting go. We must shed the old habits. We must shed our old identities. We must release those. To reinvent ourselves really demands our surrender to the process, not a dominating it, right?
I tell you what, surrender
ego
was something that was so hard for me to grok in the beginning. Because again, it's like, I thought I was easygoing, all this stuff, and it's just like, surrendering to outcomes, again, it's like building a business. You cannot be attached to success in the beginning. You, if anything, be attached to failing. Be attached to learning all the hard lessons at first.
Yeah. This ego-driven reinvention looks very dramatic, and which makes us feel like we're making great progress, right?
Yep.
But it's unstable. At best, it's unstable. Disciplined practice and change is quieter, but it's also slower and more boring. It's not flash and flare, but it is more resilient because we simply cannot become something new overnight. 33 years of this does not going to change overnight. And for many of us, 33 years is just dropping a bucket. I know people that go 60 years before they decide that change is something they need.
I heard a statistic yesterday that just blew my mind. So to build a muscle memory, playing guitar, whatever, it takes 300 repetitions doing squats for your body to remember how to do something. To build a new neural pathway, it takes 3,000 times you got to ingrain that in your pathway. And I'm not talking affirmations here. I just got to repeat this 3,000 times. There's got to be conviction there. There's got to be action and emotion there.
Yeah, that is staggering. It sounds impossible, but is it?
No.
The sooner you start, the closer you get to 3,000.
Yep.
Let's talk about change, how it can either be chosen or forced upon us, right? Because really change comes to us one way or the other. Now, if we're able to, we can meet that through first a conscious choice, or we could be carried into it by circumstance. But it will arrive. No, this is not a threat. I'm not threatening you.
It is how life works, though.
It's simply the nature of life and the movement of the light of creation, the universe. This is how it moves. Now, when we're able to,
wisdom.
It is.
The law of wisdom states that if you can embody a lesson before having to learn it, then you won't have to deal with the lesson.
Right.
95% of us cannot follow that because we might be able to understand consciously, but we will do the thing anyway.
Right. We do. And not all change can be chosen, right? But when we can change, when we can choose, we can apply intention. We can start to prepare for it. And we can deliberately move towards it because we're ready. We're ready to try to get as much clarity and agency, even when it's uncomfortable. But what happens when we resist change, when it comes upon us without our permission? Does it just go away? Does it just disappear?
No, it will drive your life into the ground. It is that whole hill you die on, right? You know, it's those people who stay in those businesses for too long while they're watching their business go under and they're dumping their life savings into it. The people who stay in those toxic relationships where they know that they're unhappy and they try to weather it out and think things will change. It is doing the wrong thing consistently and expecting different results.
Yeah. Yeah, that's insanity.
Yeah.
That's almost the textbook definition of it, right?
Yeah.
Resistance does not prevent these things. It really only determines how much suffering you're going to have because it returns through pressure, crisis, loss, as you said, it crashes us into the ground. And this is why people have a hard time with surrendering to a process and not trying to force it, right? Because a lot of us, through ego or pride or whatever the case may be, this is where we confuse surrender with submission. We think that surrender is a weakness. It's not. It's a wisdom. It's really the knowing that forcing your will against reality will only make that conflict deepen, and it will grow your shadow. But submission, on the other hand, is what? You're just straight abandoning your responsibility over yourself. That human being that you're entrusted to, you have a responsibility to that human being. And here we don't ask for submission. We ask for alignment. That's what our path asks of us, right?
Yeah.
You may not have much control over the events, outside events that enter into your life. We certainly never really have much choice on the timing.
Right.
Or the form or the circumstances, but we always have some control over our response if we practice, right? If we train ourselves to do that.
Well, I think it's so important. I mean, again, the differentiation between surrender is mighty because we can learn to surrender when it's necessary, to learn that this is not the right path, that I need to course correct, that there is something here that is not working anymore. And surrender doesn't always mean I need to quit all of this, but it does mean you need to stop and evaluate what is going on. What do you have control over, which is not very much. And is it worth trying to push through? And sometimes that can be excruciating because you have so much invested into whatever this is.
And a lot of times we have a lot invested in our forcing of it. We're attached to it. There's an axiom that speaks very clear here about what we're talking about. You cannot always use force against that which opposes you. There are times when it is wise to endure opposition in favor of a peaceful resolution. Now, this certainly does not mean that we tolerate harm or abandon our discernment. Discernment's a superpower. It just means that we need to learn to recognize when resistance is costing us more than favoring us. Because really, that surrender, more like acceptance, creates adaptation. When we can learn to stop fighting what's already happening, our energy becomes available for the better response, right? We start to see options that were not available because they were invisible to us when we looked and we locked in on force and opposition. This is how we regain the power of choice. When we gave up all choice by just pushing and pushing and pushing.
When so often we try to push through things, I mean, it's just to our own detriment. We waste so much of almost all of us can say it. We've had those situations in our life where we stuck around longer than we should have. And getting out of that situation, even if it meant less money or heartbreak or lesser living conditions, I mean, the list can go on. We were happier. We were more fulfilled afterwards.
There's an important part of this, and I've always called it taking an inventory. And there's 5 parts of the self that we must address and assess, right? Those are our physical selves, our emotional selves, our intellectual selves, or our mind, our social selves, and our spiritual selves. That's where we try to focus these assessments. Not judgments, assessments, inventories. Because really it's been my experience that to build a new life, we have to take these honest inventories of where we are right now, in the moment. Not with judgment, not with shame or blame, but with clarity. Because change really begins with truth. And truth requires what, Michael?
Transparency?
Yes. Honesty, right? We got to look at ourselves as we are. Not as we wish we were or who we fear we might be.
The greatest lie we ever told was the lie we told ourselves, right? I mean, I think so many people are so over-identified with the mask they wear that it leads to their ruin. It leads to inauthentic lives and unfulfilling lives.
Yeah. So, starting with the physical, we have to really sit down and ask ourselves honestly. Here's some examples. Am I caring for my body in a way that supports the life I want to live? Am I resilient? Am I rested? Or am I nourished? Am I capable of meeting the daily demands of my life?
Am I prioritizing rest in my schedule if I'm really busy?
Right. Yeah. Now, there are aspects of our body that we can't control. And we just need to acknowledge those, right? With a little bit of compassion. But there are also choices we make every day that either support or erode our health and our vitality. The body is not a separate part of transformation. It is literally that vessel that we carry everything in. So we've got to take care of it, right? So next comes the emotional part. And here's some honest questions that you can ask yourself. Are you able to regulate your emotions without suppressing them, or denying them, or running from them? Do you take ownership of how you feel? Or do you just give up that responsibility to someone else? She makes me so mad, right?
Yeah.
We just did a show on emotional resolve, but just in a nutshell, emotional maturity is not the absence of strong feelings. It's that ability to meet them, to sit with them, to experience them, to listen to their messages without letting them take over. Next, we move into the mind or the intellectual domain. Are you curious? Or have you become rigid, refusing any kind of outside perspective? Do you seek understanding? Or do you defend to the death what you already believe without testing those beliefs?
I think one of the saddest things I see out there, and I see this with so many people, and I was one of these, is when you limit your capabilities by the stories you tell yourself. I remember before I started school, because I didn't do good in high school. A lot of people didn't. And I told myself, I'm not smart enough for that. There's no way I could handle that kind of information. I can't write papers. I can't read books. And that was the story I told myself for 10 years. Lo and behold, I'm doing good. Made Dean's List last semester. I mean, it's like it's the ability to stop with the stories and to prove to yourself otherwise. And it doesn't mean it'll be easy. I tell you what, the first time I tried to sit and read a book, it was a struggle. But then I started getting into the book. I started dedicating time and putting away distractions. Because it wasn't me not being able to read, it was me not wanting to hold my attention to something.
Yeah. Healing and growth and transformation require learning. And learning requires openness and honesty, doesn't it?
And understanding it may not be as entertaining as watching that Netflix series that you want to binge.
Those are much more fun. Not always as good for us, though. Socially, and this part often reveals more than we want or can expect. A simple question: who do you surround yourself with? Right? Do your relationships reflect who you are becoming or who you've already been? Do you belong without pretending?
Are you isolated? I mean, that's That's such a big thing. Don't get me wrong, it's great to have a spouse, a family, all these things, but do you have people in your life? Back to that whole complacency thing and the comfort zone trap. I mean, isolation is one of the most common issues because people don't know how to get out of their shells.
Hmm.
And that is not something you're inherently born with. It is practice, trial and error, discomfort.
Hmm. Yeah. Spiritually, does your life align with your beliefs?
Or even better, does it
Without
align with your values?
values, beliefs, without pretending? Do your actions reflect the values you claim to hold? Is spirituality about performance, perfection, or about presence for you? Right? Because it's about presence. It's not about perfection.
And it's
It's about
definitely not about performance.
no. Although there's a lot of that, and I can understand why we get stuck in that because that's literally where we come from, right? Many of us. Just kind of, and throughout these inventories, and those are just kind of some sample questions you can ask yourself, but do them honestly. But remember this guiding principle when you're doing this inventory. Your assessment must come from acceptance, not self-loathing, curiosity, not judgment, right? I promise you, you cannot shame yourself enough into becoming someone new. Just dig in that hole. Just dig in the hole, Michael.
Reinforcing those negative beliefs about yourself.
Yeah. Let's talk about our environments and about the people that we surround ourselves with, how important they are. Let me ask you, Michael, did you choose where you were born? Did you choose any part of your birth? What you look like, what sex you were, what kind of religion you were born into, the culture, the economic conditions? Did you have any choice in any of that? Right? None of us did. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. Some people say, "Oh, yeah, I did all that before I was born." Well, if I did that, I don't remember doing that. So I'm just going to assume that I didn't. We didn't really choose the early influences that shaped our understanding of the world, right? When we first opened our eyes. But it's important to understand that these are just the starting points of our life, not our final destination. But as we grow, something important will shift. We start to gain the ability to choose our environment and choose our companions.
Well, I think an important note when it comes to change, dramatic change, if it's like addiction or you're really in a self-destructive pattern, that isolation's bad, that comfort zone trap, right? You have to change your environment. That is one of the most important parts of changing your state. Our environment psychologically will keep us trapped. One of my favorite things to do is reorganize. Haven't done it here because we don't have the space, but I used to reorganize every season. It's like, all right, time to start fresh. New chapter.
Yeah. Who we walk with matters, and who we walk with in the environment that we allow ourselves to be. When we can choose others, right? We can choose different. That starts to shape our perception and our reality. Our companions will influence our behavior because the people that we surround ourselves with will quietly reinforce one thing or the other. What's acceptable, what's possible, what's normal, what's weird. This is not a judgment, this is reality. It is the truth. This is why communion with the right people is important. Not echo chambers, not people who just agree with everything you say, but people who can challenge you with curiosity and challenge you honestly and reflect your mirroring accurately. Not just staring into the mirror without a reflection, but also people who can share your commitment to transformation because they're trying to grow too, right? This stuff strengthens us. This tests our ideas. It puts us in that heat and pressure, but in a place that's not going to burn us or crush us.
It's like
Where
I
you're
still have
allowed.
so. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just that I have a lot of connections. A lot of my friends are from high school. But when I was going through, especially the real deep healing, I had one key friend who was learning this stuff with me. And that was the one person that I could go to all the time. We hung out once a month minimal, and we would talk about this stuff, what we were learning, what we were trying, our struggles, our tribulations, and
Right.
the things we learned about ourselves. And that was the person who really impacted me the most in my life and helped me on my journey when it came to the people in my social groups.
Yeah, because your assumptions can be questioned without judgment, right? The blind spots that we all create for ourselves through dogma or through just refusal to see the truth, those get pointed out to us and revealed to us. We grow not because everybody agrees with us, but because we develop this shared dedication to being authentic and true. But this is where change can become painful, because as we shed our old patterns, we sometimes shed relationships. And this doesn't mean that these people were bad or wrong. It just means that we're no longer in alignment with who we are and who we're becoming.
I think one other important thing to talk about with this, because a lot of people in the isolation phase struggle with this, is many people have superficial relationships. There's no depth to these connections we have that we consider our closest friends. And we have to be able to... We're afraid of what people will think about us. And that matters way too much to us. We're afraid of the reactions they'll have to our truths, to our feelings. And in reality, that holds us back from such genuine connections and figuring out who's good for us, because those superficial relationships, you can have 1,000 of those, but they won't have the impact that that one meaningful relationship will.
This is why we must choose our external influences wisely. Because no, it does not and should not require your isolation. It requires discernment. We have to choose companions who can walk beside us, not behind us, or on top of us, or in front of us, right? Next to us. And yes, that could be a difficult thing to find. We did a show many moons ago now. This is episode 101, I think, 102. So, but we talked about building that tribe, right? That inner circle that really, really can help with this. We do oftentimes walk our path alone, but we must not, Michael, walk it without connection. This is part of the journey. And we have to know when it's time to connect and I won't say connect and disconnect, because we're always kind of connected, whether we want to be or not, but we must be able to discern when it's time to walk a little bit by ourselves and then rejoin others in communion. Do you have any final thoughts for the show today? I know we talked about a lot of different stuff.
When it comes to the process of growth and becoming who we want to become, I know I brought it up earlier that we need to meet ourselves where we're at, and we can't be shooting for this far off thing. What I highly recommend for anyone to do who truly wants to discover the path of change in their lives, figure out the person you want to become. Write out, what is this person's values? What is this person's strengths? Then ask yourself, what about me would have to change to become this person? After gathering all that data, then just ask yourself, what would the next step in my journey look like to get closer to this? Not everything changing all at once. What is the next feasible transition you could see into this person you want to become? And again, this is a messy process. Don't judge yourself. You are going to slip and fall 1,000 times. I can promise you that. And also, it's part of the journey. So give yourself that compassion, that self-love. And then you'll be able to go through this with grace and consistency.
Yeah, this is not a cosmetic thing. You're not simply rebranding.
Yeah.
It's not just a change in language or belief or who you associate with alone. There has to be some shedding, and that's rarely comfortable. You can't carry old habits into a new life and expect different outcomes, as you've said. We cannot cling to old identities or old defenses or old excuses or old stories, right? And expect the future to reshape itself in a different way around you. It's just going to be the same old thing, just dressed up different, right?
Yep.
We have to start building a version of us that is ready and able to live the life that we are seeking and that is capable of living, right? This does not mean erasure. You're not erasing your past. It just means releasing what no longer serves what you're becoming. We have to allow parts of ourselves to fall away so something present now that's capable to take its place. This process demands patience, and it demands courage. And above all, it demands alignment between who you claim to be and how you actually live. So there's a lot of need for truth and integrity in there too. When you started upon this path with me, did I ever promise you'd be easy?
No.
No, it's pretty upfront about that, right? This path does not promise an easy way, an easy life. But what it does promise is coherence and alignment. Because when these two, when your inner world and your outer worlds, your actions, your thoughts align, that resistance does soften though, doesn't it? It does get easier. Your clarity increases. And the path forward becomes something that you can live and you can walk, especially in those times when it becomes difficult. You cannot build a new life with an old self, but you can become someone capable of living the life you seek. So that's what I want to leave everyone today. I'll get to my call to action here in a minute, but first, our affirmations. I release habits, identities, and beliefs that no longer serve who I am becoming. I choose growth even when it requires discomfort and change. I am honest with myself about where I must evolve. I take responsibility for my choices and my becoming. I allow the old self to fall away so the new self can emerge. In our journal prompts for today, what parts of my old self am I still protecting, even though they limit and stunt my growth? Which fears or comforts keep me from fully stepping into change? Who will I become if I stop clinging to who I was? That's probably the big one. That's going to be a tough one to answer. Call to action for this episode. This week, take one honest inventory. Choose one domain of your life. You don't have to do all 5, but just do one. Physical, emotional, intellectual, social, or spiritual. And look at it without judgment. And try to ask yourself what habits, identities, or beliefs belong to an older version of you, and determine whether they still serve the life you're trying to build. Promise you'll find at least one. Probably more, but at least one. Don't try to change everything at once. Choose one small, disciplined action that reflects who you are building, the life you're building to becoming, not who you have been. Then live that choice consistently to the best of your ability for the next 7 days, so for the next week. And I want you to pay particular attention to what resistance you find. What kinds of things do you experience in your body? What kinds of things are you thinking? How is it affecting your relationships? Right? Pay attention to those things. Pay attention to what gets stronger. Pay attention to what begins to loosen for you. You're going to find resistance, but don't fret. It's not a failure. It's information, and just treat it like information. You don't have to reinvent your whole entire life today, and in fact, you probably can't. You only need to stop protecting these parts of yourself that are keeping you from evolving. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. Make sure you check out all the socials. You can always find those at the bottom of our homepage at the greatest website ever, newashla.com. Yeah. Say goodbye, Michael.
Love you guys with love and gratitude. Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.